going on, everyone? This is your Astrology Horoscope for Friday, August 11th, 2023. I'm astrologer Alex Skiles, and welcome to the Moon Base. Thank you all so much for being here. Hope y'all are doing amazing. It's been a wild week. We're ending the week, going into the weekend with a pretty wild Friday. Got the moon in Gemini, and it's going to be making some pretty dead-on aspects to the nodes today while squaring Neptune. So the moon's going to be trining the south node, sextiling the north node while squaring Neptune, all at 27 degrees here. And really what this says to me is that past relationships and being able to analyze past relationships and what this new identity that we're coming into about ourselves is starting to look like. And definitely the moon today is illuminating some emotions and being able to look at those emotions about these past relationships and what we want the future to look like with our new identity. It's being able to come from both sides, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine kind of perspective here, and being able to detach from those emotions in a certain way to really help us move forward towards the future in a much better objective way. Gemini gives you both sides, right? And so does Libra. Libra gives you both sides as well. And Aries gives you one direction, and that is fast and forward, and we go now and we don't look back, right? And that's kind of how it feels. That's kind of how this energy feels. I mean, Mercury's slowing down. It's in its shadow. It's going to retrograde soon. Venus is still retrograding, but this North Node is just really giving us this, karmic direction towards just not looking back, But I feel like today with the moon in Gemini, shedding light on both sides of the situation about ourselves and these relationships that have really brought us to this place that we're at now, is helping us clear a lot of, things that we just have been stuck in, and codependent situations and things that have really taken us away from being our true self, And at the same time, like, Juno is at 27 squaring the nodes. So this is definitely really about our closest partnerships here. Juno's Jupiter's wife, and it's a very interconnected relationship, but also like it's this learning to detach from these emotions that have not nurtured who we are, nurtured our true being, and especially with the South Node in Libra, it's like, we're putting too much into something or somebody else. Like, we're losing touch with who we are. And definitely with this Juno and Cancer squaring the nodes, it's like, it may feel like we've poured so much into this relationship and we're getting nothing back. And, it seems like when it gets to that unhealthy point, we really just have to, not be afraid to just move forward. And Eris is starting to conjunct the North Node too. So either way, there's going to be situations that's just going to be kind of kicking the can over, and saying, hey, if I have to start a fire just to create what the future is going to look like, just to clear a pathway, even if it's chaotic or whatever, it's what it's got to be. And, this Juno is really like, it wants to bring in these nurturing relationships and partnerships. But at the same time, it's like, which direction are we going? It's these cardinal signs that is really pulling us like we're on a stretcher with our hands and feet strapped in, And Juno's going to oppose Pluto here. I mean, Pluto's at 28. The nodes are at 27. Juno's at 27. And we got somewhat of a cardinal grand cross here. And this is really like, it's like, where have our relationships and the structure and the foundation of our relationships kind of toppled over, and how are they going to be rebuilt, and how are they going to transform into something new? And this moon in Gemini sextiling and trining the nodes is saying, hey, like, there's two options here. You know, we have the emotional aspect and we have the mental aspect, and how can they function together to really embrace these emotions, to have healthier emotional exchanges and communication. And the moon's going to be squaring Neptune as this is all happening too, so there's a lot of confusion and even conversations that can come up. It can get confusing, especially with Mercury slowing down now. It's like, you know, we could be talking in circles here. Like, you know, we could be saying all the things we could possibly want to say and nothing seems to stick. And that's kind of what's been happening with this Neptune and Pisces transit. It's like you could throw things at a Velcro wall and nothing's sticking, you know? It just kind of slips in and out and does its own thing. It's water. Like, it becomes whatever the shape of any situation is, you know? Each situation or relationship has a certain shape to it. You know, a frequency or a note has a certain shape. You know, lower frequencies have a much more broader shape. Higher frequencies are much more fine and acute. So it's how this Neptune frequency is taking shape, you know, and that's what can get confusing with this moon in Gemini squaring Neptune, is that whenever it morphs, it's so, it can be deceptive, you know. It's like this moon in Gemini is saying, hey, like, I want to be able to give you both options. I want to be able to communicate in a healthy way, but I want to be able to, like, trust and know who you are and what this situation is really, what the is it even possible to have solidity in these relationships? So this Virgo, this Mercury and Mars in Virgo, it wants to find that solidity. And as Mercury and Mars get ready to oppose Neptune while the moon is squaring Neptune, it's like, hey, like, if this isn't solid, like, we have to do what's best for the situation, for what our for what is better for our mental and physical health. You know, Neptune is, you know, our emotional and spiritual health, and Virgo is, you know, our physical health, and that has to be balanced. And if things are too confusing and just pulling you in all directions, and one day it's this, one day it's that, you really got to take that North Node and just do it yourself. And the more we can just aim towards that direction for ourselves, the less we can get caught up in these sticky situations that seem to have no form at all. Because by the time Saturn meets Neptune, it's really going to be like testing what is really actually solid and what is really just kind of slipping on by and is never really going to actually take any solid form that is only going to guide you into places that you don't want to be. So right now, Mars and Mercury really want to make things solid. And it's really difficult with this Neptune and this moon square. So we really got to do what is best for us to just be objective and here in reality, and not just get so far out into these neurotic states that the moon can bring up when it's squaring Neptune. So there's just so much action going on within our relationships over these next couple weeks. I mean, really for the next 18 months, but especially right now with Venus retrograde and the moon making these great aspects. I mean, at the same time, it's like there's some massive healing taking shape in our relationships, especially Mars is starting to make an inconjunction or a quincunx to Chiron. So we want to actually act upon healing these relationships and really being in service of other people who need healing. And I feel like that's what this Mars aspect to Chiron wants to really highlight here is that, like, how can we help others heal? Virgo wants to serve others. It wants to, be in the service of other people to help people heal and stay grounded. And I feel like that's what we need. Chiron and Aries, it's hard, at times to not just lose your head, literally, So this Mars making this in conjunction to Chiron, it's like, how can we really be in service to help others heal? Going into the weekend, that's going to be very necessary because the moon's going to be in Cancer here by the end of the night on Friday night. So it's a balsamic moon right before the new moon. So the moon is at its darkest point. And when we have a new moon in Leo, that always means that the balsamic moon is in Cancer, which the moon rules the sign of Cancer. So when the moon is in its balsamic phase of Cancer, like, that is one of the most emotional periods we have of the year. And I've kind of followed this the past couple of years of, like, wow, like, when that balsamic moon is in Cancer, it's like these emotions get really deep, really intense. The darker things can bubble up to the surface, and on Saturday, I mean, we'll talk about it over the weekend, but, the balsamic moon's going to conjunct Juno while opposing Pluto. So some serious, intense emotions are going to come up before this new moon. And we're on our way to this Kazemi point of the moon, or the sun, and Venus conjuncting with Venus retrograde. And that is a very potent aspect. And there's a lot of, like, this is when the Venus retrograde conjuncts the sun and it goes back across the sun. This is when, like, the Venus retrograde starts to really be like, okay, like, this is what we need to do, like, in our relationships, in our creative partnerships. Like, this is really gonna be giving us the insight towards really being able to kind of know what we want and not be able to speak from, or not be afraid to speak from the heart to and who, whatever we need to get across. Because things have just kind of been up in the air or all over the place. I know I've definitely had an incredibly interesting Venus retrograde, almost comical, so to say, in certain ways, where it's just like, no way. Like, I can't believe that this person is with this person, or this is going on outside of that. I've witnessed a lot of pretty wild stuff in this Venus retrograde, but this is the moment going into the weekend with this balsamic moon, and this Venus Kazemi point, like, all bubbling up at once. The moon opposing Pluto. I mean, it's like things are really coming to the surface now, and this is really going to help us kind of get more over some of these humps that this Venus retrograde is really brought upon. But yeah, I really love this Mars in conjunct Chiron for some reason. I feel like it's really calling out. I mean, there's uncomfortable things coming up, but these uncomfortable situations are really pushing us towards helping one another heal and really get to know who we are, and that's what this Chiron is ultimately really challenging all of us individually. Is like, what costume are we going to wear today? Right? It's like, well, the costume we really need to put on is the one that's really going to make us actually be able to heal ourselves and our bodies. Because sometimes when we get so lost in our heads and get so fixated on what direction we're going and who we want to be without actually just being who we are, that can manifest in our bodies in negative ways. So yeah, this Mars quincunxing Chiron is giving us some really interesting insight towards really healing our identities and our physical bodies and how they are interlinked here. So yeah, going into the weekend, it's gonna get really interesting. I mean, this next whole week is just wild with this new moon, the Kazemi, Sun conjuncting Venus. If you don't know what Kazemi means, it just simply means that it's when a planet is conjuncting the sun, and when the sun meets with a planet. So the Sun and Venus retrograde are meeting here. That's what a Kazemi point is. So this is going to be a really interesting Friday. So just the Moon in Gemini squaring Neptune. You don't want to get too caught up in these neurotic states. Just really focusing on being able to come at it from a dualistic perspective and not being afraid to just say how you feel without attaching your emotions to it. And that's what Gemini does best. They'll give you both sides. Gemini will give you both sides without any emotional attachment, because by the time the moon comes into Cancer, it's going to be a whole different story. Emotions are going to flare. It's the darkest point when, like I'll say it again, it's like I've been watching this balsamic moon in Cancer for the past few years, and I've been paying attention to it. I'm like, wow, like that is the most potent, intense time when the moon is in Cancer. With Cancer being ruled by the moon, and that new moon in Leo being the only time that the moon is going to be invisible in the sign of Cancer is when our emotions are at its most intense peak here. Oh, so we got a card that fell. Wow. We got the Six of Pentacles. So, like, I feel like this weekend, it's like we're overcoming some big obstacles. And I really feel like in this Venus Kazemi point is us overcoming some big obstacles in our relationships and knowing, okay, like we've really got to reflect on our worth and our self worth and our value, but also like what all of our self-worth and our value adds up to be able to be our raw, authentic selves, which is Leo, right? So I feel like we might get to a place this weekend where it's like we know for sure what that really is and what direction we're going on to really achieve that, and to get over these humps. And we might really find that this weekend, like as these emotions before we get to the new moon start bubbling up, and in some really dramatic ways. I mean, this Venus retrograde is really just, I've seen some pretty ridiculous, hilarious drama play out. And as you could either take it as like, holy shit, I can't believe that's happening. Or you could take it as like, it's like you're watching a dramatic movie and it's almost comical in a way. Because it is like what we always say. It's like we get back. It's like, oh, one day we're going to look back and laugh. Even though this was a difficult situation. And I feel like that's what this Venus retrograde is kind of like. It's like one day we're going to look back at this one and fucking have a good laugh, right? So, anyway, hope you guys have a great Friday, and I will see you in the weekend. Peace.